Here we are. We're live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Fake Accents Unite. I am so sorry that we are 60 seconds late because of the delay. The delay to the stream. Like, Britisher got in, literally, like 15, 20 seconds ago. And he's like, I'm here. I'm punctual. Why are we not live already, NSO? For goodness sake, there you go. People in the chat, you're late.
Pull yourself together, man. This is just ridiculous. I was here on time. I don't see why the stream wasn't.
People in the chat going, late, you're late. May your children be born woke. That's the
oh dear God! Now that's quite that's like that ancient Chinese curse, isn't it? May you live an interesting life.
Oh yes, of course.
Are you familiar with that?
I am indeed. Yes.
Yes. So may your children be born woke. That's a new level of cruelty, really, isn't it?
Oh dear. I sound like I'm very congested. I assure you, I am not. What
end?
To what end? You're usually the congested one after all, Britisher, although you somehow managed to achieve that despite not actually owning a nose. It's quite impressive, really.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's lovely to see so many...
How do I not own a nose? Oh, well, yes, this is your jar story, yes.
I mean, for goodness sake...
Of course, on my avatar, I am always told that my nose is wrong.
Oh, really?
Yes.
At the moment, I can't confirm or deny this, because the live symbol that I have in the little preview of the stream, which goes up, is covering your face.
Oh, well, you see, that shows your misplaced priorities, doesn't it?
I have many misplaced priorities, Britisher, none the least being running a podcast on a Monday evening.
Well, there is that, yes.
Lovely.
And of course, meanwhile, what needs to be pointed out is that somehow there must be still some wolf packs loose in the North Sea. And some German submarine must have torpedoed this island because it appears to be sinking.
Oh dear, what go on?
Well, I mean, you surely must have watched the news and
the flooding, yes.
There's just flood alerts all across the country.
Yes, we will be discussing the flood in greater detail later on, definitely. So just let me boot up the old Streamlabs so that I can see what all the super chats and whatnot that will clearly come rolling in over the course of the show will say. It's nice.
Well, I mean, you'll need a wheelbarrow, won't you, for this?
No, I'll need a dinghy, given the state of the country, right? Obviously, sorry, apologies for this, folks. Right, there we go. So it's nice to see so many regulars in the chat. We seem to have we've picked up the regular following. I'm not sure what happened last week, but it was a bit of a slow news week, so I can understand that. Yeah, how's your day been going, Britisher? I've not had a chance to ask you yet, given your punctualness.
Well, what can I say? When it comes to myself, today was, how should we put it, a somewhat relaxed day.
You, Britisher, relaxed? It's very hard.
Yes,
it's always very hard. People, you know what they say, don't you? It's very hard for the Britisher to be relaxed when he's got that fence post up his... Never mind, actually, we won't finish that.
Yes, thanks for that. When it came, you have to consider that last week, of course, we had Storm Ciara arriving.
Yes, the worst storm.
Ciara was a bit of a monster. It was one of those storms where you have... the isobars that they kind of show as in sort of, a circle to kind of show the depression, if you know what I mean.
Oh, right, yes.
And Storm Ciara, the circles effectively filled the North Atlantic.
Yeah.
So effectively, they reached from Newfoundland to Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And this monster of a storm arrived here, just deposited oodles of water, and then went and smashed into Norway or something.
Mm-hmm.
And no sooner had that happened, we were then told, oh, there seems to be something else brewing off the coast of the United States of America.
Right.
So you're there going, oh dear God, I hope the rivers managed to lower before the next thing arrives. And lo and behold, Storm Dennis arrives and just goes completely bananas. So as
The storm went bananas. I just want to take a
Precisely,
moment
yes.
to appreciate the level of metaphor that we have at this point.
So this thing, it is said to arrive. So we know about it. Say, shall we say 2 days in advance or something like
well
that?
in advance, yes.
So given that you're already looking at the river levels, going ooh, and this thing is then said to arrive, it means that you are in a state of mental tension
Mm-hmm.
for the 2 days before it even gets here, if you know what I mean.
Has it been hitting you
Then
hard, out of curiosity?
Sorry?
Has it been hitting you hard in particular?
Yes, I wasn't flooded, but it wasn't that far off. And it was, it was one of those things where you are somewhat tense as this thing is happening. And you are beginning to, you're sort of looking at it going, I think I may start taking some stuff upstairs,
Just in case.
Just in case, precisely. So you start getting things out of the way and whatever. And yes, this actually, how shall we say, there are a certain number of mental calories that you're going through, while you're
wondering
waiting for these things to happen.
You're wondering how much soup you have in the kitchen and if you have any means of actually heating it if the
Yes.
storm takes things out.
Then, of course, a lot of this stuff then, when eventually it does start to happen, happens in the dark, So not only are you none the wiser, but the news are also none the wiser because nobody can really see what the hell is going on. So
No.
everybody's really waiting for the next day to dawn. And therefore, then when you finally get to Sunday and you realize, you know what? It doesn't look as if it's going to happen here.
No.
By that time, you have been through several days of, I'm not sure.
Stress and consternation.
Yes, by that time, you're quite knackered.
Of course, Britisher, that this is a prime argument against immigration to this country because, as the Asia Research Directorate says in chat, too many people on the island is going to make it capsize.
Well, yes, I was just thinking that way. I didn't think capsize. I was more thinking you were about to say that with increased population numbers, the weight on the island is pressing it down into the sea.
Like a great it's a great weighted foot. It's like, yes.
But the so therefore then to get to post flood alert Monday is, how should we say, it's the great exhaling where you just go, and relax.
Yeah, I was expecting, because when Kira came across, the where I live in London, we were getting pretty battered, if not really by the rain, at least by the wind. And it was really quite horrible to go out in it. Actually, no, we had a bit of horizontal rain even here. And then, so I can only imagine how bad it was in the rest of the country. This Dennis thing comes through. Clear skies here. Absolutely, pure blue. Today's been a lovely day as well. And I'm just going...
I think it's affected sort of various... I think, what people sort of seem to not quite get is that Kiara seemed to affect different areas than Dennis did.
Mm-hmm.
Those places that now seem to have really got it are the ones where Kiara and Dennis overlapped.
Yeah. There's some interesting photos of kind of waist level water coming out of places.
Oh yes, yeah, no doubt. But no, it for someone who's been flooded twice, the prospect of this happening yet again was not necessarily something I was looking forward to.
Thrilled by the idea of it.
Yes, indeed.
How's that? How's that home insurance, Britisher?
Yes. It was rather telling that this evening I bumped into a chap in the supermarket who, frankly, I don't even know his name, and I don't think he knows mine.
Nobody knows your name.
Precisely. It's one of those where you pass someone in the street, and you pass someone in the street for 10 years, and you're kind of saying hello and being civil and whatever, and once in a while exchange a pleasantry and off you go again. And today I saw him in the supermarket, and he sort of, his eyes latched onto me, and he was, "Have you heard any news of the river?"
Oh God.
And I just went, "Actually, I think you should be fine. It sounds as if everything's going down." "Oh, really?" And you could see there was this kind of feverish look. This guy had had a real shocker of a weekend.
Yeah.
And yes, I think I was the one who kind of put him out of his misery, as in, "Okay, no, you're fine. You're not going to be flooded." So yeah, I think kind of
20
people. Yeah, I think people sort of underestimate just how it can be, because from what I know, that chap has also been flooded twice. So yeah,
how many?
I could.
Yeah, how many times had a 20-year-old Britisher been flooded though? That's the real question.
Well, you see, that's between me and Noah.
Oh, I think I'm going to call you Brian. In terms of in my head when I'm considering your thing, and that's purely because it's an anagram of brain, and that's basically
also because I'm a very naughty boy. Yes,
and certainly not the Messiah. Yes,
way ahead of you there.
Yes, I know so. So it says apparently for those of you who are living abroad, apparently, Storm Dennis has hit primarily Worcestershire, or as I used to call it when I was a child, Worcestershire. Because you could never.
So you were American as a child?
No, or just slow, shall we call it? Yes, late bloomer when it came to that sort of thing. It's
not
also
much changed there then.
Oh, just you wait, Britisher. I remember at one point getting into quite two conversations from my childhood. Occasionally where you have these conversations where it's a word that you've got wrong reading it in your head because you haven't really used it in local conversation, and one of the words that I got wrong when I was about 7 or 8 years old was chimney. So chimneys were chimneys. There was no N in it; it was double M.
Okay. Yep.
So there was that one, and also fatigue. I distinctly remember fatigue being fatigue. Because I just had read it in books, but I'd never used it in real life. Probably by the age of about 10.
And this was at what age?
But before I was 10, not.
Yeah, I just mean fatigue is actually quite a word for a 10-year-old. I would think that's actually quite a decent standard of vocabulary.
My dad came from sort of East and South London. And he was very, very keen that his children would not grow up with a limited vocabulary. So I didn't have vocabulary lessons, but I was instructed effectively to read a lot. And I was really interested in reading and writing. So
here's the dictionary. I expect you to know pages 14 to 17 by tomorrow
It wasn't
morning.
quite like that, no. I extol the virtues of a rigorous verbal education, yes.
I think many self-taught people in the past liked to kind of sort of almost like have a word or two per day from the dictionary.
Like as some people might have a selection of aperitifs with their lunch. There's just
Charlie Chaplin was well known for that.
Mm-hmm.
That he kind of over the years went through the dictionary. And he would therefore sort of, every day he would take in a word or two from the dictionary and then seek to apply it during that day. And like that, he acquired a massive vocabulary.
Well, I'm always interested in the idea that once you hear a new word, you're likely to hear it again within the next 7 days. That's a strange phenomenon, where it's like you have this kind of either this auditory or verbal blindness to, or deafness, as it were, to these particular words, and then you pick it up in a normal conversation, and suddenly you hear it everywhere, and you can't get away from it. So you
come across the word discombobulated, and suddenly, for the rest of the week, everything is very confusing indeed.
Funny story with the word discombobulated. I came across the word discombobulated. The next week, I went and watched Robert Downey Jr.'s take on Sherlock Holmes, the first film, and in that is a scene where he talks about discombobulating people.
How discombobulating?
Yes, indeed. So there you go.
Is the chat joining in discombobulation, or are they just blanking this completely?
I tend to find that the chat is quite regularly discombobulating.
Well, there is that. And there is us, of course.
I can see a few people. So, where is it now? Brant Burrs, like with a 4 in the middle of it for some bizarre reason, said, I used to deploy dichotomy as dick it to me. And that was that.
Yes, I could see how that might lead to misunderstandings.
Yes, and Russell Burnham saying, my sister called the fish and chip shop the fish and chip chop. So there's that. Or is that potentially a regional accent thing? Who knows? But there we are.
No, I think chop for shop is not a regional accent. No.
Well, depends where you come from, Britisher, you racist.
Well, of course. You know.
I'm going to just run through the first couple of super chats which have come in. British Knight says, the Britisher is often punctual. It's rubber that perpetuates boomer moments. I speak from experience, but he spelt experience as experience. So there is that.
Yes, rubber has a habit of arriving, as you put it, punctually or slightly post-punctually.
Is he like a wizard? He arrives precisely when he means to, but that's not necessarily on time.
Precisely, yes. That's very well put.
Lil Aotearoa says, you're so late. You deserve to have snails eat the glue off the stamps of all your letters. I don't think we were quite that late. Of all,
that's a really strange. That's a strange sort of curse, isn't it?
Also, do you think snails favour any particular stamp, or do they just have an addiction to saliva? Snails are just massive. They're really good
Here's
French.
A question. This interests me. Are you actually old enough to remember stamps that need to be licked?
I thought you were going to say, are you old enough to remember stamps? And I'm like, I don't know how young you think I am, Britisher. The miracle of physical communication.
Stamps that need to be licked.
Absolutely, yes, very much so.
Oh, well, there you go. See, that at least we have something in common.
You remember? The only thing we have in common is that we both remember lickable stamps. Amazing.
Well, I mean, you know, it's definitely something worthy of recognition that we both occasionally have licked the back of the Queen's head. But I mean, you are, you know, I think you will be painfully aware that these days they come on these kind of, you know, these kind of pre-glued stamps that are kind of like temporarily stuck on some
like a kind of lacquered,
sort of glossy background,
lacquered wax strip or something like that. Yes,
and you peel it off that and then stick it on the envelope. Whereas once upon a time you actually had to lick them, and I'm quite sure there must be a goodly number of millennials in this country who don't recall stamps that need to be licked.
Oh, I have no doubt at all, especially the Gen Zers.
See, these people don't know they're born. In my day, you needed to lick stamps.
There's, you know, bloody hard work, but worth every second, you know. That's the thing. And they were cheaper then, too. It's like just a bit of manual labour. Sitscoen says, whilst you may have started the stream 3 to 33 seconds early, you were still 27 seconds late. However, this is acceptable. As for the water, may I suggest burning up a city in offering to the old ones? Yes, he's referring.
Well, I wouldn't have thought that he objected to floodings because it would mean that the dragon boats can reach all sorts of parts they would usually not get to.
They can travel further inland. Is that what it's like? The pillaging can go on unhindered even further, as far as Oxford or Cambridge, perhaps even Reading. But yes,
well, I don't think the Vikings would necessarily want to pillage Cambridge at the moment. It seems to be being pillaged by someone else.
By someone else or another group? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, by another group. Someone even more terrifying than the Vikings.
Extinction Rebellion. Is this what you're
Yes.
referring to? Yes. That leads us quite nicely on. As for Storm Dennis, do we have anything else we want to say on Storm Dennis? Just that we had some severe... I like how we have this severe... 2 of the 6 severe warnings in England are for Uckinghall and Upton upon Severn, where residents are being advised to evacuate their homes. And on the BBC article in question, there is a picture of a man walking through not even ankle-deep water with one of those kind of push-along sort of a mixture between a walker and a shopping trolley as he goes through.
What I find so bizarre is this idea of the severe flood warning. So, I mean, essentially, you get the amber and then you get the red. So the amber is flooding is possible.
Mm-hmm.
The red then is flooding expected. And then you get another red warning, which is then the severe flood warning. And really, the severe flood warning isn't a warning at all, because by that time you've been flooded.
Britain has always had a weird relationship to the word severe.
When the BBC is constantly using this terminology, it seems to kind of strangely be sticking to the terminology of the Environment Agency of severe flood warning, and you just go, what's to warn? Once you're standing knee deep in water, you've been flooded. You don't need warning.
Yes, well, we have these weird... Britain has a weird relationship with the word severe anyway. I'm sure you're familiar with the bikini warning state, if only because of the name.
You mentioned bikinis. I'm interested. You have my rapt attention.
So we have this it's called the Bikini Alert State, and I don't know why they call it bikini, but in fact, let me just read... It was previously used by the Ministry of Defence to warn of non-specific forms of threat, right? So you've got white, no information is available. Black, there is possibility of an attack but no defined target, or civil unrest. Black special, again, increased likelihood. Amber, which is a kind of substantial threat to government targets. And then red, which is that the UK is at war, especially if there's a likelihood of a nuclear strike, right? But we also have these things for various different threats to the UK. In particular, it's usually used for terrorism, right? So you have low, moderate, substantial, severe, and critical, which are all fairly self-explanatory. But severe just means highly likely. And then we have response, which is normal, heightened, or exceptional. So normal just means routine. Heightened means additional protective security measures have been implemented.
And response means order new nuclear warheads.
Exceptional means... No, there's no response. And exceptional or critical is used... That basically means that we're going towards something in the region of a police state again for a military intervention.
Well, interesting that no doubt was.
Sorry,
it wasn't. Go ahead.
The reason that I bring this up is that we've been at a heightened severe state for the past nearly 20 years, basically. Ever since 9/11, we've been at severe heightened state, and and then they moved it down to substantial, and then some plonker ran some people over using truck of peace, and we went straight back up to severe again. So it's like kind of business as usual. Like when are they ever going to bring it down to moderate?
Well, all I can say is this was very interesting, but it wasn't quite where I thought you were going to go when you mentioned bikini. But there you go.
Oh! People were saying bikini was the Bikini Atoll that it was where it came from originally. Yes, thank you very much, Colin. Yes, what were you saying, Britisher?
Well, I'm still not sure regarding the Bikini Atoll and the connection. I mean, there is a nuclear connection with the Bikini Atoll and
yes. Well, the top threat level warning was for potential nuclear strike. So yes.
Well, the Bikini Atoll, was that the one where they blew up the first nuclear devices, or was that when they were already doing the thermonuclear? God, what are they called? Hydrogen bombs.
It was. where they detonated 23 nukes between 1946 and 58. So that's as far as I know for it.
No, it's interesting because wasn't the first hydrogen bomb a bit of a catastrophe because they basically blew it up at a an island in the Pacific, and they had a measuring station at the far side of the island, and they had miscalculated, and the bomb actually turned out to be a multiple the size of the capacity of what they thought a hydrogen bomb would be.
It was something like they positioned their bunker at one point, and they knew that it was going to be very bright, so at least they protected their eyes. But the explosion came very, very close to them, and they didn't expect that. Yes,
and yeah, it was they all needed to be evacuated in the end.
Yes,
so. It was one of those yes, it's almost comical when you read actually just how wrong it all went and what the causes of those mistakes were.
One of the big mistakes which Object of Hate has mentioned in the chat was I believe they wanted to know what the effect of a nuke, the US Navy wanted to know what the effect of a nuke was on ships that were close to it. And so there were a number of men who were exposed effectively to nuclear radiation at what was considered to be a safe, in inverted commas, distance. And they all ended up hideously sort of irradiated and caused all sorts of problems later on.
Well, they had every man who had some sort of bone breakage or other skeletal problems stand there, and then they had a doctor stand right behind him, and he just got the X-ray right there and then. Yeah.
The Jury Riggy saying, "Get the faces." I can see Undoomed in chat. Please feel free to jump in via Discord at any point, Undoomed, if you're interested. The glow in the dark servicemen, poor buggers. That's what I can see there. Apparently, the first nuclear test was Alamogordo in New Mexico. Bikini was the first hydrogen bomb Ivy Mike test. And Castle Bravo test was the accident. 3 times the expected yield. So there's that. Just hopping back briefly to the flooding story. DRT is King says, "Fun fact, Florida is as big as the main island of the UK. Also easy to flood. If this happens more often, will we get British man stories? Viva Florida." As in, not Florida man, but British man.
Well, you see, there's a distinct difference involved here. And that is that the British are British and not colonials.
Yes, did we send the best of the best
so
to Florida?
That already rules certain things out.
Indeed. Let me see what I've got here. Yes, King Piccolo Damo says, "Did you see the Times front page on Orwellian hate speech and the Sunday Times detailing the BBC licence fee? Both of them are most pleasing." Feel free to link me up. I have seen them. I don't have them linked up for tonight's stream. But
there was a headline. There was a headline that the government was definitely seeking to get rid of the licence fee. I'm sceptical about that.
Yes, in fact, I have a story sort of briefly connecting it here. Where's this? The BBC licence fee. So this came out 2 hours ago. 2 senior Tory MPs have warned Downing Street not to pick a fight with the BBC amid reports it wants the broadcaster massively pruned back. Sunday Times suggested Number 10 believed the current licence fee should be replaced by a subscription service and certain channels sold. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Damien Green said it would be foolish to put public service broadcasting at risks and that the plans were not part of the election manifesto. And Hugh Merriman, MP for Bexhill and Battle, that's near where I grew up, good grief, warned Number 10 against ramping up an unedifying vendetta against the BBC, saying the corporation should not be a target. So there is that.
Well, if I just may, I would say it is true that it wasn't part of the Tory manifesto. That much is true. But Boris Johnson was already talking about this, about the license fee during the election.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as if the Tories completely hid this away.
No. It's also interesting because what they've done, like the inference is, do we want to keep the BBC? At the same time, no one talks about the fact that whether or not the BBC is going to continue to receive funding from the European Union, which it does. And there's also the only action that's really been taken by the government is that they launched a consultation on whether non-payment of the licence fee should remain a criminal offence, which is slightly different to saying abolish the BBC, right? Given that it's an unenforceable.
Well, yes, I mean, it's a consultation, but it clearly indicates a certain intent. And I think the intent is there. Basically, they want to put the BBC under pressure.
Yes, I feel like they want to put the fear of God into them.
Yes, they're trying to say to them, look, you need to reform, or else we might just press the button.
Reform or die, that's the thing.
Yes, but my worry is that the BBC is so heavily sort of ideological these days that they will sooner die than reform.
Mm-hmm.
That they basically
they can swing the debate in themselves, given that they are the broadcaster after all, and platform the people who are much more willing to talk about how this is the Brexit bias corporation, or this is the Tories attacking us for our unbiased coverage. Of Brexit.
Yes, but I think what I'm sort of trying to say is they are aware of the propaganda possibilities of the BBC, so they're fully aware of the fact that this is a very powerful tool, and they will sooner see it destroyed than share it with an ideological enemy.
Mm.
That's my fear behind this whole thing, that they will sort of sooner see the whole thing go down in flames, then be able to blame their political opponent for it,
as far as I'm
rather than in any way share it with anybody.
As far as I'm concerned, the whole thing in terms of quality has gone down in flames already, and so I'm quite happy to see it burn. I've just noted that a certain Undoomed has joined the channel. Good evening.
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad, thank you very much.
The faceless entity has arrived.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So how are you guys enjoying freedom?
Well, it's yet to kick in. We are in the transition period at the moment. But I do have a funny story that will interest you as well, Undoomed, about Brexit, which is, where is it here? An article was released today which said, "Do voters need therapy?"
I saw that, yes.
And this is the day after the general election, Boris Johnson suggested that he wanted to cure the divisions caused by Britain's vote to leave the European Union. Indeed, he urged everyone to find closure and let the healing begin. The use of the words closure and healing is significant, because in a poll last year, 2/3 of people thought that Britain's exit from the EU was negatively affecting the nation's mental health. And if we click that link itself as well, let me just get rid of this image here on the screen as well. It says, Brexit anxiety. I can't sleep because of it. This is an article from April last year. So, and again, this is Hugh Merriman. So this is the chap who has also been urging not to defund the BBC. Revealed this week, he lost 4 inches from his waistline as a result of Brexit-related stress, which seems positive given that he's a chunky chap by the looks of things. And it has since...
Well, isn't that a good thing, though?
Yeah, like maybe the Brexit weight loss program has had remarkable effects. He says...
The Brexit diet.
The Brexit diet. Briat, as it were. It has since emerged that civil servants around the UK were offered counselling to help prepare for a no-deal scenario. But it's not just those directly involved in the political process who are suffering. Many people have contacted the BBC to say how recent political developments, or a lack thereof, are having an impact on their mental state. Paul Groom, 61, had a heart attack 2 years ago and said both he and his cardiologist believe Brexit-related anxiety contributed towards it. Brexit derangement syndrome is causing heart attacks up and down the country, ladies and gentlemen.
You're just recycling all those ideas from the Trump election, aren't you? I mean, I saw the other day, like a couple of weeks ago, you had a article in the Guardian about this was all a Russian plant thing, and you see that?
Yeah, Putin's running everything from behind the scenes, of course.
Yep, he's running Brexit, of course. That came out. So yeah, you're just you should stop copying us. You don't have a contractual obligation to copy all the stupid shit we do.
I love it. I love it how in that story, it wasn't just he who thought that Brexit had helped bring on the heart attack, but no, he and his cardiologist thought.
Of course. Mr. Groom says, I think about Brexit every day, no matter what, says Mr. Groom, who retired to France with his wife 2 years ago. But I bet he's an expat and not an immigrant. Isn't that interesting? We were living in Devon, he says. We planned to sell our UK house and put the equity into our future financial plan. Then came Brexit. Our whole lives have been put on hold since then. We, along with many others, have no idea where our lives are going to end up. Apply for French citizenship. Learn French. Or fuck off. That's the general gist of things. You don't even live in the UK, for goodness sake. Me and my wife are both losing sleep over it, he adds, as Mr. Groom. And I have to put this clarification. As Mr. Groom, who voted to remain in 2016. You don't say.
Oh, you think?
Can you imagine if he said he voted leave? And he realised he made such a colossal mistake that he's been having this heart attack. He worries that he may have to move back to the UK. God forbid that he should have to come back to the country of his origin if he moves to another country and doesn't apply for citizenship there. At the moment, if I wake up in the night, the first thing I do is check my phone to see what else has happened in Parliament. Oh, it's good to know he's keeping up with current affairs then, doesn't it? The worry and subsequent lack of sleep, he believes, has negatively affected his physical health, as well as his mental well-being. I've never had heart issues before, he says. Lifestyle is the main cause, but as my cardiologist says, the stress doesn't help. So it doesn't sound like his cardiologist is actually in agreement at all. Oh, my lifestyle is the main cause of my heart attack, but the stress is what's pushed it over the edge. Good grief.
And he was probably just saying something like, "Oh, this is stressing me out. Oh my God!" And his doctor's going, "Yeah, sure, okay, whatever."
Yes,
that's probably the affirmation he got there.
Have you considered eating less cheese and bacon? Yes.
Yeah, that was probably what he tacked on after. So
maybe reduce the consumption of McDonald's dinners.
Yes.
It's phenomenal. It's ridiculous, he says. It's not just those who voted Remain who are suffering Brexit-related anxiety as a result of the UK's current political journey. Rachel Muse, 50, who voted to leave in 2016, says she thinks about Brexit every day. It's ridiculous, but I'm finding it very stressful, says Miss Muse, who is a chef from Salisbury. She adds, I don't have many hobbies. Work takes up a lot of my time, but my main hobby is following the news. I would normally make a point of listening to the news. I listen to PM, 6 o'clock news, blah, blah, blah. However, she says she's no longer tuning in because of the stress around Brexit and the losing of sleep. God forbid that people should lose sleep over things.
Well, maybe that's a good thing then.
I find it.
Don't tune in if it fucks up your head.
I find it interesting how there were no articles like this about pro-Brexit voters in the north of England losing sleep and having heart problems at being constantly derided as racist, xenophobe Nazis.
And also being denied the Brexit that they voted for. Yes.
Yes, by the people who here we now are told are having heart attacks.
Yes, indeed. Here's the study, anyway. Brexit anxiety. Who is affected? Like one of the quotes from an expert, Dr. Louise Theodosio from the Royal College of Psychiatrists says, yes, it's right to keep yourself informed because information can reduce anxiety, but the constant stream of information can be really challenging. We're learning too much. We know too much. You can't handle the truth. That's what I'm getting from that. Brexit anxiety. Who is affected? A survey of more than 2,000 people carried out in March last year by the research company Britain Thinks suggests that 64% of people feel anxiety relating to Brexit is negatively affecting Britain's mental health. Women, 70%, are more likely than men, 58%, to be concerned.
Which university did they ask the 2,000 students to answer this question?
That's a good question.
Oh my goodness. I'm not going to... I can't be bothered to go through a full presentation PDF at this stage to go to look at that. But apparently, I like how they're focusing on the stress, right? They're like, nearly 2/3 of people are stressed, and it's negatively affecting Britain's mental health. More importantly, 84% of people are fed up with seeing Brexit on the news and are unimpressed with both Labour and the Conservatives' handling of Brexit. Which, again, people just wanted it done, which is, of course, why Boris Johnson's party won last time with the let's just get the bloody thing done campaign.
In all fairness,
right.
I still think it's one of the reasons. I don't think that Brexit was just the reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a sort of a cumulative thing of several reasons. I think, just saying it's Brexit is what we, for example, hear from the Labour Party now. Oh, no. Our policies were right. Everybody likes our policies. They're very popular. It was only Brexit. We don't need to change anything. There are actually several things that contributed to this. And Brexit was one of the chief ones, undoubtedly. But Brexit was not the one and only thing that somehow forced this through and got the Tories this whopping majority.
But it must have been a huge thing, though.
Oh yes. I mean, it's
You've been living in this limbo. You've been living in limbo for years now with this thing over your head. It must have been seriously important to the voters.
That if you have a party leader who calls Hamas his friends,
he sure didn't help himself.
Yeah, who is then proposing, real. I mean, folks in America call Bernie Sanders a communist. I mean, I would like to hear Americans actually listen to Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto and then see what they think a communist is.
Right.
Then, aside from that, you also had these northern constituencies. These were the ones that swung to the Tories, who had been completely neglected. And I think that's one of the things that may actually happen in America, where Democrat areas that have always just basically been taken for granted, as in, they anyway vote for us. So Labour areas in the north of England that have always voted Labour since the creation of those constituencies that suddenly went, you know what, we've had enough of you. We're voting for the other side. Because they felt that having voted Labour for all this time had not actually done them any good.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I think it's fair to say the nation is sick and tired of being told what to think.
Absolutely. If it helps, Dr. Theodosio says gentle exercise can help alleviate your stress, Britisher. So there is that.
Well, I might have got some gentle exercise if I would have been flooded. I could have gone for a swim.
Indeed. At the moment, you can just go for like a little paddle, can't you?
Well, are you flooded?
No. It was one of those where it was getting close.
Ah, okay.
Because yes, we had these two monster storms, and in my case, it was already at the point where I felt, okay, I'll start getting some stuff upstairs. So that's how close it really came, if you know what I mean.
All right. Well, that's disconcerting.
That's the end.
Survived. What can I say?
For goodness sake, Britisher, how have you managed that?
Yeah.
So Scowen says, licking stamps taught us something important. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Yes, bring back lickable stamps.
Please tell me, did you have lickable stamps over in the States, Undoomed?
Sure.
Do you still have lickable stamps, or do you now have these kind of auto-glued things that you need to peel off and put on envelopes?
I don't think I've bought a single stamp in, I don't know, since I was a kid. There's always like a stamp machine or something you can just run it through.
A stamp machine?
You run it through a machine and it comes out with this barcodes and shit.
Truly, we are living in
here are the Americans again. Just no sense of tradition, no sense of romanticism, just nothing. Just stick it through a machine.
Automation.
And it will send the envelope to the panhandle. It's terrible.
Automation is ruining the jobs of many great American stamp lickers. Where is the Stamp Lickers Union to protest this move?
Do you know that when it comes to sort of things that are sort of automated away or abandoned, on the East Coast and on the West Coast main line, we had trains with actual sorting carriages in them. So lots of post that was sent from the south of England up to the north of England would then be pre-sorted on the trains.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually had them there, sort of in front of these little sort of slots that they could kind of put the various envelopes in.
And you want that back, is what you're saying?
I mean, them were the days. That's the sort of thing we need.
You troglodyte.
In fact, there was, talking of troglodytes, given that we're talking about the caves, there is under London now. I think it's part of a museum. In fact, I think about the Royal Mail. There is a little underground train. It's like a miniature underground train, which the Royal Mail used in order to move post from one side of London to the other.
Right.
And nowadays they've kind of turned it into a tourist attraction.
I think I've seen a documentary about that.
I have never heard of this particular innovation. But interesting.
Well, there you go. I think it's the Royal Mail or Post Museum or whatever, and you can separately, I think, also get tickets to go on that train, and
right.
it's supposed to be a bit of a ride.
I think they used them during the Blitz, right? As shelter.
Oh yes, yeah. The undergrounds in London sort of throughout used as shelters because they're that deep.
Right.
That they were quite useful as bunkers.
I think they talked about that in that documentary, that they were used for that as well, those tunnels. But
perhaps I just don't have enough free time to be watching documentaries on stamps and the Royal Mail.
Oh, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Listen to how virtuous Not So Obvious is. He's so busy he has no time to watch documentaries.
I didn't say that my time was filled with morally righteous things. For all of you know, I could be a complete degenerate, as you're always in
that women's netball team.
Yes, you're always inferring I'm either having it off with a women's netball team or singing to the Russian government.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Why can't it be both?
Indeed, Ivan.
It's at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
DRT is King says, "You skipped me again, you limes." We didn't skip you. We talked about whether or not the UK would become British man as opposed to Florida man. I think we got you just there, unless we've missed something else that you said. You'll have to go back and check. Alpha Omega Record says, "Britisher, the next time NSO pronounces enquiry as inquiry, like an American, please slap him. Thank you. On with the show, chaps." Well, first of all, I was talking about an inquiry, not an inquiry. And secondly, an inquiry is different to an enquiry, so as far as I can tell. Do you know the difference, Britisher, or are you going to let me down here?
I'm sure you're about to tell us.
No, I'm not.
I have absolutely no idea whether there is a difference between an enquiry and an inquiry.
So an inquiry is a formal inquest, an investigation. An enquiry is just the act of questioning itself. So there's that. So
I didn't know that there was a difference in spelling for those two.
There is a distinction.
One
begins with an E, one begins with an A. The British will learn something. What are you, 20 years old?
Whether that will actually survive in my memory until tomorrow.
I could, yes, indeed, which is quite amusing, given that I was learning about long-term memory and the effects of antegrade amnesia today, about a man who has only got a 7-second memory, and I was thinking of you the entire time, Britisher, because clearly you never remember anything.
The man with the 7-second memory, that's me, yes.
Base Liz is saying, "You will not replace us. Florida man will live forever." Could appreciate that. What side of the states are you from, Undoomed, without doxing yourself unnecessarily?
The West.
In the western side. And I assume Florida is in the east somewhere.
Yes.
Yes. We do wonder about these things. Vomit.
Yeah, no Florida men here, but we're just as stupid on the West Coast. So.
Vomit A&A Sausage donated through Super Chat. Thank you very much. Says, "Undoomed is on. Moist." Thanks for that. How do you respond to such a thing? That people also
damn right. That's what you say.
People are also mentioning that, of course, you don't have lickable stamps, Undoomed. You don't have a mouth with which to lick the stamps.
Yes, that's also a good observation, I guess.
I still remember regarding moist that were you the first one to record it? I'm not sure, Undoomed. That we had that thing on Twitter where you recorded yourself saying moist in your inimitable way. I remember I did so too, and then we managed to persuade Stux Hexenhammer to join in and also do it. But at some point the chain broke and no one else was doing it anymore.
I have a vague memory of that, but I don't remember exactly how that came to be.
The same here. I have absolutely no idea. But you know what things are like on Twitter. They can be strange days sometimes.
Oh yeah. But I do remember it. But yeah,
it is an achievement of ours that we did manage to get Stix Hexenhammer to record moist and put it on Twitter.
Now you just need him to get to say the word gusset, and you'll have the most disgusting phrase ever uttered in British English. Yes. Rubber says, "I'm hiding from Ray. Can I seek refuge here for a bit?" Of course you can, man. Feel free to jump on if you like as well. Tom of Gulf City says, "Call them what they are, Britisher. Stickers, not stamps."
There is that, yes. Yes, if they're not licked, then more than likely they're just stickers. Yes, I agree. Yes.
Gross.
The Queen's stickers.
Oh, no. That sounds too close to something else, and we don't want to go there. George says, "Is it just me, or does the Britisher use one and you wrongly? Shoddy grammar for someone with such particular diction. Slaps may be due, NSO." I don't think I've particularly noted you using...
Right now, I honestly can say I don't know what this person is talking about. But I'm quite sure I have made plenty of errors.
I have noticed that you used one more than the average person, but I don't think it's wrong the way you use it. Usually, you would say one would do this when another person would just say you would do this. You know what I mean?
One is unclear what you are doing incorrectly, Britisher. That's all I'll have to say to that one.
Perhaps this person is worried that my use of the word one is a little too majestic. Because, of course, the Queen is known to use one in a sort of... Yeah.
Nothing that you have ever said in the history of our entire relationship together, Britisher, could ever be described as majestic.
Well, yes, I find it hard to disagree with you there. Yes.
Apparently, according to...
I think you can see where I was going in the use of the term majestic.
Yes, with majesty, as in literally royal, yes. Craig Jovanovic in chat saying, "Using you in conversation is incorrect," apparently. So saying or something like that, presumably. You need to start using the royal we, Britisher. That's what...
Pluralis majestatis, yes. The royal we.
Speaking of Astartes, the Americans have been discussing what Trump is going to name the various ranks in his Space Force haven't they? And
have they?
And
this sounds interesting.
And one of the top comments that keeps coming up is Astartes, which is a reference to Warhammer 40k and Space Marines. So it's just getting a bit out of hand. Although I think if Trump decided to name his ranks after a pseudo-fascistic kind of totalitarian warmongering government, that might be a bad move. What do you think?
Was this thing today on Twitter or something? Or?
Oh, I saw it the other day on Twitter, yeah.
So is this just straightforward, I mean, the American lieutenant and things like that, or are they introducing hitherto unheard of
no,
rankings?
I this must have been some stupid joke thing, right?
As far as I can tell, it came from a tweet that Trump made, but I can't give you the exact link, unfortunately.
Because I would imagine just like when they created the Marine Corps, they would just use regular terms,
The George is pointing out that he's clarifying when it comes to your usage of the word one, Britisher, that you do it backwards. It's just wrong. You say one was doing XYZ when referring to someone else. Apparently. Have we lost the Britisher?
No, I'm still here. I'm just cogitating. I'm trying to work out what on earth this is regarding. But yeah, I don't know how to respond.
Fair enough.
Let's say your comments have been noted.
The
diplomatic enough?
I thought you were going to say one's comments have been noted, and I'd just be like, for goodness sake, Britisher, the correct phrase is "I'm sorry and I won't do it again." Just try it out for size. Why don't you just try that on for size?
No, I won't do that for the SJW. I sure as hell won't do that for you.
Good evening, Rubber. It's nice to see you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Yes, you too. I if Ray comes past, I'm not here. Okay.
Fair enough.
Is that Ray, or does it also involve the hamsters?
No. Believe me, I'd much rather spend a weekend in the company of the hamsters than to be on a live stream with Ray. I
think it's unlikely that she'll come by. I had her.
No, I know.
I had her for one live stream, and that was all that I wanted from her, and all that I needed. And she has made a couple of inquests.
So I take it that means it's not the girl from Star Wars.
No. We are talking about Ray Murasami, long-time antagonist from Unpopular Opinions and beyond. And
in fact, the person who named this very live stream.
She did indeed. Fake Accents.
Unwittingly.
For those of you who don't know, because I feel the need to reiterate this every 20 or 25 episodes or so, Fake Accents Unite is derived from the fact that behind the scenes on an episode of Unpopular Opinions, Ray Murasami said to the academic agent that she could not stand either myself or the Britisher because as we were disingenuous hacks. And above all, we put on ridiculous fake accents that no one could ever believe were real.
And she's an expert in these things.
Of course, yes.
Okay.
One thing that is worth pointing out there is that I don't think it was actually the academic agent who was told this. It was Friended Forever, wasn't it?
Oh, was it now?
Yes, it was when she did a stream with Friended to basically sort of reveal all as to just how horrible we all were on the stream with academic agent. And if I remember rightly, she pretty much went through every single character that was in any way regularly involved in the stream.
Yes.
And with us, it was that, yes, we definitely, we had fake accents. It was entirely a pretense. It was ridiculous. Yes.
I'm thinking of instead a time where she, behind the scenes, decided that she would refer to me as a sopping sea, and I won't finish that because I had refused to die effectively in combat as part of the military, and being medically discharged, I was terribly weak.
It's wonderful, however, how we have managed to keep up the pretense with our fake accents ever since.
I'm sure she regards it as a feather in her cap that she's just so highly regarded as to have a show named after one of her comments, as opposed to it being irony that went too far.
Of course, on the couple of occasions we've met, I was shocked by your accent. It was all like, I'll have you all on here.
Yes, I used the word "in it" quite frequently.
And that's just Undoomed.
And that's just Undoomed is the most soft-spoken of us all. We know this. And it definitely doesn't sound like he has a mixture of smoking 20 cigarettes simultaneously whilst gargling granite flakes. Yes.
Yeah, well, don't forget the whiskey now.
Now, I wonder what Ray would make of Oozaloo, because he has got sort of radio presenter's voice and then some, but it's natural.
He can't turn it off either. It's quite interesting having met him in real life. And yes, he is as insufferable in reality as he is online. So there is that. For those of you who don't know, we are friends. That's not a real comment. Where was I?
Well, you are friends, so it is a real comment.
Oh, yeah, clearly. Drake Glazer says, Britisher, can you say my name? Also, when British man become Florida man, we do expect the deeds to be greater. Because we can't do things by half.
I think Not So Obvious may have given the game away there, and therefore stolen your thunder. I mean, in that case, it would be Drake Glazer, would it? Which no doubt I will forget by the next time. Because when it comes to this particular name, I always struggle with Glazer, Glazer, what is it?
I should have deliberately said it incorrectly now, shouldn't I? I said, Drake.
Well, maybe you did.
It's unlikely. My command of the English language is empirically better than yours.
Of course. Yes, as we have already established with enquiry and inquiry. Yes.
And the man who can't use one in the correct context.
Or can, as the case may be.
Chat saying, I was medically discharged as unfit to be killed in action. Yes, that's quite correct. We have a couple of more stories. Of course, have you heard about Richard Dawkins this week?
Yes, and this ties in nicely with the Ray thing, because she wants me on a live stream to talk eugenics with her. And seriously, that's what she wants me. She wants me to be the representative of the counter proposal. I go, what counter proposal? I'm not in favour of it. You're not in favour of it. What's...
Sounds like a lovely girl.
In fact, I do apologise. Before we go too far into this, I did miss a super chat from King Piccolo Daimo, who says, one is most happy that the 4 p.m. showing of Midsummer Murders, with John Nettles, no less, is showing again on ITV3, and the 7 p.m. showing of Poirot. Are either of you avid, or any of you are avid for goodness sake, I'm stumbling over my command of the English language right now. Yes. Either of my British guests or my American guests, avid viewers of Midsummer Murders or Poirot?
Poirot, yes. Midsummer, no.
My mother was very much into Midsummer Murders, but not myself. But I did end up watching an awful lot of Poirot, especially with, who was it? The chap who's most famous for
Suchet.
David Suchet. I knew it was David, but I was going, it's not David Jason. That's a completely different series entirely.
But with Midsummer Murders, it's named after the sort of town, the country town of Midsummer it's supposed to be set in, isn't it?
That's news to me, but yes.
I believe that is the case.
Yes.
So, effectively, given how long the series is running, I mean, surely by now the population must have realised that Midsummer is a complete death trap.
Well, yes, it's much like Holby City. I think there was a parody show, and they're inviting someone into a home, and there's like a step ladder immediately in the doorway that you have to go through. There's water dripping down from a faucet that's in the ceiling onto a light switch with exposed wiring, and it sparks every time. And they're going, "This is prime real estate around here," like the sort of the experience of they've got an awful lot of hospital admissions given the area. Yes, you'd think people would avoid it like the plague. Apparently Midsummer's the county Britisher. So there's that.
Oh, is it? Oh well, that shows what I know. It's not a show
I don't think I've
really
ever
can
seen
follow,
it.
So
I'm
best I could
Never seen it.
more familiar with Poirot, as someone in chat has just described it. David Suchet was famous in that for, aside from his performance, but he used to walk around and he had this Belgian mince that was kind of very much associated with the character. And he revealed years later that he used to literally clench a penny between his buttocks in order to pull the mince off whilst on set.
That's his excuse.
Okay.
Well, to me, Poirot is always going to be. Wasn't it Peter Ustinov in Death on the Nile?
Yes.
Yes.
And
So
also-
yes, that to me, that's Poirot.
He also did, I
Rather
think,
than
Evil
David
Under the Sun.
Suchet.
I think he did 2 Poirot films.
Yep.
He's very good. I think it's like, do you prefer Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes to Jeremy Brett?
There is
would
nothing
say-
to prefer. Basil Rathbone is the ultimate Sherlock
Okay,
Holmes.
so even though the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes films are not good adaptations of Conan Doyle, but Jeremy Brett's is a faithful adaptation. The same with Ustinov, gives it that panache, but the David Suchet ones are the literal adaptations. So you take
Yes, I understand fully what you're saying, and what you're saying is that Basil Rathbone and Peter Ustinov are not the faithful adaptation, but they are otherwise just better.
yes.
Britisher, Mira J.
yes.
Mira J is requesting in chat that you hum the Poirot theme tune for the chat.
I can't because I wouldn't know it.
Right, that's it. You are going to be disowned as soon as this stream is finished. I'm going to have to take the whisk to the jar once again. I'm certainly not going to hum it myself, but it's a shame. We'll have to work something out in the interim week, and then you'll have to do it next time, I'm afraid.
Will I now?
Yes, you will. And people in chat saying Brett was the best Holmes. This is lies from you, Britisher. But okay, jumping back to Richard Dawkins.
Rathbone was not only the best Holmes, his sidekick with him was the best Watson.
It's nothing like the Watson of the books.
I don't care.
It's just Nigel Bruce playing Nigel Bruce.
And here I was half expecting you, Britisher, to go, well, you really enjoyed Martin Freeman as Dr. Watson in the Benedict
God.
Cumberbatch modern take on Sherlock Holmes, which is clearly your favourite outing. In fact, anything by Stephen Moffat is your favourite show,
yes,
isn't
very
it?
much. It's very much down my street.
Any
yes.
of that SJW, Doctor Who, or the new Sherlock Holmes, definitely up your avenue. Richard Dawkins basically put out a tweet yesterday around 7 a.m, clearly waking up and deciding that he had his thought for the day. And he said, "It's one thing to deploy eugenics on ideological, political, and moral grounds. It's quite another to conclude that it wouldn't work in practice. Of course it would. It works for cows, horses, pigs, dogs, and roses. Why on earth wouldn't it work for humans? Facts ignore ideology." There's that. And he's been generally raked over the coals for this stance on supporting eugenics, apparently, tacitly. Because it's a hate fact to admit to the idea that even if something is morally repugnant, it might achieve the desired outcome of whoever actually implemented it. If that makes sense. Any comments?
Right. Well, I think he was kind of asking for a shitstorm.
Well, there is that.
It was like, of course you're going to get totally attacked on that. It's the question is just what's he trying to achieve?
I like how
it's
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, can I just ask something just from the off, just so we're clear on that, because I'm not clear from what you've just read there. Was that something that is just that he posted out as an initial tweet, or was he in fact reacting to something someone else had said?
This is an initial tweet.
Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
However, to me, it sounded like he was answering a question on Twitter that was probably posed by a fellow evolutionary biologist. So it sounds like that something that he would have had, a discussion he would have had in a kind of academic forum, he decided to leak out on Twitter for whatever reason. But it, for me, I understood what he meant immediately, because he prefaced it with the morality and ethics thing. He said, leaving that issue aside, the nuts and bolts science, it would work. But it's not advocating for it, is it?
There's a lot of talk. I think it's William Stern who first advocated eugenics. But basically, there's been a lot of talk in academic circles where eugenics is kind of derided as this idea that is not just morally bad, but it's kind of methodologically flawed. It wouldn't be possible to do, even though we do it. It's kind of, it's treated with that kind of disdain, as opposed to something that it's quite easy to morally and ethically disapprove of. But the idea that it would work, and the reason that it underpinned so much of the 20th century in particular, when we were moving away from phrenology and into more empirical methods, it was basically like something that could work, at least clearly. And as Geoffrey Miller, who's another scientist, evolutionary psychologist, I think, who's involved in the same sort of thing, just points out that mate choice or sexual selection is just intuitive eugenics in a way. So it does work after a fashion. We do make these kinds of selections. It's just the idea that sexual selection is more bottom up and eugenics is a top down directive. That makes sense.
But the thing is that it seemed obvious, because he had prefaced it with the moral dimension. He clearly wasn't saying we should do this. He was just saying it could be done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and if you are going to fight eugenicists, then you can't start from the position that eugenics wouldn't work, because they'll just throw the science in your face and say, well, it does, and therefore you weakened your own position. Whereas it's very easy to it's right to concede the idea that eugenics would work and to focus on the moral argument. Whereas if you try and fight them on the science, it doesn't work that way.
Where have we seen that kind of thing before? Fighting science reality. But it just, I think there was an academic, and I use that term with inverted commas, who launched the big pushback on Dawkins. And I tweeted to her, you clearly did not comprehend what was written. And it's just, but people like to be, this is the thing I took away from it, is that people see trigger words in a sentence and they don't read the sentence. They just pick out words like eugenics.
Well, one of the, I was interested in the mindset of sort of ideologues, and one of the things which comes to mind is Cassie J, when she was producing her documentary The Red Pill, which is her exploration of the men's rights activist movement. And she's talking about how when she initially started talking to these people against her better judgment, as it were, she would hear something that they would say, and then she would add inferences on top of it. So, for instance, and you can see some of this stuff in the replies to Dawkins' tweets. So you get someone who's saying, socialist spec says mask 100% off, you know, that sort of thing.
Yes.
And it's just like, really? Like, it's the same kind of thinking which underpins like really dualistic perceptions of guilt by association, right? You are with these people, therefore you're evil just because you talked to them, for instance, and that sort of thing. Let me see. Oh, yes, eugenics is the science of breeding to increase desirable genetic traits. We breed roses for their colour and their smell. Please, tell us, what do you consider to be desirable genetic traits in humans? And it's just like, for goodness sake, the genes, like, if you're looking at eugenics without the moral dimension, and you're saying, like, there are plenty of genes, there's mental illnesses, there's heritable diseases, there's heritable mental illnesses. There's a great degree of heritability in things like depression, for instance, not to mention the wide variety of physical disabilities. And you're just like, it's clear that there is a spectrum of things which are desirable and undesirable, and that it would be perfectly possible to effectively breed those out. Not that it would be morally acceptable. But the fact that you're stating that doesn't make it any less of a truth, for goodness sake.
It's
Right.
don't sperm donation clinics work on the same principle, that you have that place that says all our donors are high IQ men?
Oh yes, the sapiosexual sperm banks. Yes.
Yes, would you like sperm from an athlete, sperm from a chess grandmaster? I mean, that it's already done on such a soft level, as being said, with dating preferences.
I'm trying to think whether or not there was something I was going to. Oh yes, so this of course comes at the same time as one of the advisors to Number 10 Downing Street. So the Conservative government, a chap called Andrew Sobieski. He's just resigned from his position, but at the time of this article was written today, Labour was calling for his resignation anyway, because Downing Street refused to condemn controversial past remarks on pregnancy, eugenics and race, reportedly made by a new advisor. Now, it's curious what these remarks are. Well, Labour said he should be sacked for saying that black people had a lower average IQ than white people, and that compulsory contraception could prevent creating a permanent underclass. Which is an interesting set of statements in and of themselves. It's well known that black people have a lower average IQ. The place where racists fall down is in the misattribution of this to purely a genetic standpoint, as opposed to looking at the vast majority of socioeconomic factors and the location of where this statistic comes from, as in the demographic data.
One thing I would like to ask in that case, because I have not seen it, because I have seen this story, but I have not seen sort of the further context given.
Mm-hmm.
All we're told is he's a government advisor.
Oh yes, they've not confirmed what his appointment or role he had.
What actually was the area in which he gave advice?
Yes, I mean, architecture.
If he is a chap who gives advice on, yes, as you say, architecture, transport, whatever, what on earth does it matter what he some 10 years ago might have said in a tweet about race?
As the Minister for Transport, he's no longer allowing black people on the trains because they have a lower IQ. Clearly, that's what they're saying. Yes,
you don't know anything what he's supposed to do?
No, they won't release what his appointment was going to be. There was also, I'm just reminded.
I mean, if he was like some sort of leader of a task force against racism, and he was once a neo-Nazi, and now he's come around, that would kind of explain it. But I guess it's not going to be. It's not going to be that simple.
Well, it wouldn't be that new for British politics either. I mean, the guy who ran one of Rotherham's councils is now one of the chief advisors on tackling child abuse, even though they were complicit through one of the worst scandals in British history when it came to child abuse, and they didn't. Well, I won't say that they helped cover it up because I'm still investigating, but we'll see how that goes.
All right, but that's a kind of a different thing, though. No,
but I'm just making the point that people will find themselves into government positions regardless, because it's not really that competency based sometimes. But basically, he made these comments, but you're quite right, Britisher, if he's there. I'm reminded of Roger Scruton, who was obviously dragged off an architecture committee and an urban greening and beautification program because he had said some stuff in his private life, which I found frankly ridiculous at the time, and thankfully he got reinstated on that up until the time of his death. But yes. Let me see what this says. So, the spokesman, where is this? So apparently he may have talked about eugenics, although there's not a direct quote given. However, the spokesperson for the PM was asked about the PM's views on eugenics, race, and women's sport repeatedly. Rather than explicitly condemn Andrew Sabisky's reported remarks, the response was to point to Boris Johnson's well-documented views on a variety of subjects. So people are decrying Boris Johnson at the moment for having refused to denounce this thing, when first and flatly a spokesperson for the PM's office has refused to condemn it. And that's literally their job, is to basically make nothing statements out of nothing statements, I would have to say.
Right.
But yeah. Sorry?
I just find this whole thing, and it was the same with Toby Young, and it was the same with Roger Scruton, and I see similarities here that I don't think the people who are calling for these people's heads because they said something that's been interpreted as outrageous, I don't think it's because of a genuine moral position. I think it is done to destabilize the government and the Conservative Party. That's all it is. It's about destabilizing, and they'll have all the advisors and all the MPs. They're doing it with Suella Braverman as well over the term she used, cultural Marxism. And what they're doing is that they're looking through. They're going back Twitter archaeology, anything they may have said or done, any associations that they had, and just go gotcha, because they just want to destabilize things.
Well, I think it's no different in the US, is it? I mean, you've basically got these outrage mobs, and they will profess outrage at whatever they can that they can in any way associate with anybody who has anything to do with Trump, irrespective of whether really privately that they are that outraged or not. And it's just a tool. Outrage has now just become a tool, and it more than likely was a political tool all along. I mean,
it's just
I would
weaponized now more than
I would argue it was initially weaponized by the right, and it has now been taken on by the left and, how do we say, amplified 1,000-fold and perfected as a weapon. And
right. I'm just curious what all this energy went into before we had social media.
Protests. The particularly, if a population could be incited to be outraged, then you would go on a protest about it, and the government would have to listen, they would take a petition up to Westminster.
But these things,
writing and so on.
99% of these things are not things that people are going to get up and protest about. It's usually trivial things that they wouldn't give a fuck about unless they get pulled into this perfect storm of anger and hatred.
Well, what they would do is they'd write their MP. That was the main thing that you'd do. You'd write your MP, and then the MP would be a barrier, effectively, who would toss most of the complaints in the bin. Whereas now, of course, no one writes their MP, pretty much, and everyone just gets their catharsis from ranting on it on Facebook or Twitter, and then signing petitions, which then actually do find their way to the Commons, because it's it's easier than ever before to get 100,000 signatures on a petition. Yeah.
I mean, students used to occupy buildings or form a little huddle outside the place of work of a particularly despised government minister or advisor. Yes, they would. It's just that now they can sit down in their homes and do the same thing. Just sort of rant and lie and smear, but they just don't have to step out into the cold air to do it.
That's very convenient, isn't it?
Mm.
Social media is nothing if not conveniently inconvenient. Yes.
Yeah.
So Downing Street says that it apparently the views expressed by for goodness sake. Let me read this from the top here. Given the PM has made a few controversial remarks of his own from time to time, although albeit of a different kind and none that I can remember on eugenics, It was an odd defence to point out that Boris Johnson has well-documented views on a variety of subjects, and the kind has added fuel to the story rather than dampened it down. The normal laws of politics might dictate that Mr. Sabisky is in line to lose the job he recently attained, but this Downing Street operation has shown it isn't afraid of a bit of controversy. It doesn't necessarily feel bound by the rules, and Dominic Cummings has at times appeared to enjoy outraging the establishment. Again, it all comes down to what was his job. If it's in his private life, I get the idea that social media makes things public now more than ever, but who gives a crap, to be honest? It's just, you just don't know. You just don't know. If his job was to be effectively a paper pusher in the office and to run messages between ministers, who cares if he's a raging racist? You know, it's not like he's influencing people, and it's not like he has any particular control over anything where he would push those kinds of views. If that makes sense.
I think normies don't care. I think only diehard activists really care, and NPCs go along with it because they've been told they have to care. So, but for the rest of
he probably
society,
was a nobody. Because if he was someone really important, it would have been strategically more sound for them to let him take office and then be outraged. But yeah, so he's probably a nobody.
Let's move on from this story now. I think it's boring me a little bit. Mighty Balzac says, "Down with this sort of thing." I presume referring to British protests where they have kind of passive-aggressive signs. Down with this sort of thing. I am mildly outraged. You know, that sort of thing. It must be bad because I'm out on the street. That sort of thing. And let's move on to what the students are up to, because we mentioned protests. Cambridge's Trinity College lawn has been dug up by Extinction Rebellion. Do you want to explain this one, Britisher? Because I believe you tweeted out and commented on this a little while ago.
Well, I think they just turned up, started digging up the lawn, put up a little flag of their own, and of course a much bigger rainbow flag on the mast. I think they've also closed down one or two streets in Cambridge itself, or should we say they've occupied the streets and then the police have closed the streets down for them.
As they do,
which I just found extremely irritating to read about. So, yes, it once again seems as if Extinction Rebellion has been granted this special status whereby they are just untouchable.
Well, the weird thing with it is that Trinity College, who are obviously the grieved here, didn't want to report the action. The police said that they're not interested in filing charges, effectively, for defamation and destruction of their property.
Well then someone would burn the house down if they did that.
I'm looking forward to the next time anybody plays Cambridge Football Club and loses, and then the fans don't like the result. So they will just start occupying a few streets and perhaps digging up a lawn or two at Cambridge University. And then, of course, the police would not do anything. I mean, it's not as if they would send in mounted police and clear them out of the way or anything like that. Because, as we see, this is the way we deal with folks these days.
I love...
I mean, if anybody in Extinction Rebellion is listening tonight, I've got this really environmentally unsound garden that needs dealing with. So if you'd like to come and protest at my place, yes, these evil weeds covered in horrible pesticides, they've got to go. So please do come along.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think they'll tear up most of the nice stuff as well at the same time. But it's bizarre. Like so they claim that they're for the environment, right? They're in favour of this. However, Extinction Rebellion members said the action taken at Trinity College was against the destruction of nature. They destroyed nature to warn us about destroying nature. They then took the dug up mud to a local Barclays Bank branch for some reason.
Dear God. Because they don't like capitalism, so they want to take it out on the bank.
Oh, of course.
Because, of course, environmentalism is inextricably linked with not liking capitalism for one reason or another.
I imagine they dumped it and said something along the lines of, "You can't eat money." and that sort of thing.
You referred to my tweet. First off, I tweeted about the police closing the streets, in which I basically suggested the police so they actually do what they're paid for and clear the streets. And when it came to this number they're pulling at the university, I suggested that, yes, they be arrested, they be charged, they be fed through the sausage machine that is the courts, and then they be sentenced to a community service, which in this case would mean laying a new lawn, and B, you know how these days they like to, if you're found to have committed some kind of crime that is some kind of race hate crime or whatever, they send you to rehabilitation classes, so you are taught to think differently. Well, in this case, I think one should send them to rehabilitation classes, which should be run for their benefit by Piers Corbyn and Katie Hopkins.
You're assuming that she wouldn't be shot as soon as she went on campus.
Doesn't that constitute cruel and unusual punishment, which is prohibited?
No, because if it's fine to basically teach those people who are of the extreme right to rehabilitate them by, sending them to a right think course in which they get all this SJW left-wing stuff fed to them, well, why shouldn't you then take some people who are clearly the extreme left and then force feed them some anti-global warming and more right-wing thing? I would think
Katie Hopkins.
You're showing
itself out.
You're showing your authoritarian side there, Britisher. I'm sorry.
In just
disavow.
In just the same way as before, when it came to the BBC, I am on record. I think Rubber will remember that I have suggested for next Director General of the BBC, Andrew Neil.
Even though he has cucked today.
Oh dear.
I don't care. I still think that he would be the right person.
The other thing about this protest, that why Trinity College didn't call in the police, do you think it's perhaps one or two of their academics were involved in digging up the lawn?
I'm sure we'll get on to that, yes.
Also that some of the students might be the children of wealthy donors to the college.
Also possible. Although, since Gowan points out, as if they know how to lay a lawn, they don't even know how to work yet. But maybe they'll learn.
Well, if you whip them hard enough, they will lay that lawn.
Well, maybe they'll get some. Maybe they'd get some. Maybe they'll get
the way British just says whip.
Maybe they'll get some grounding.
Well,
very
more
sexual.
than likely you prefer my way of saying whip rather than cattle prod.
Well, perhaps they'll get some practical skills to go alongside that dance therapy class that they're taking. Yeah. George.
Sorry.
George says, the left gave up on right versus wrong. It is now only about good versus evil. Against evil, good people need no argument. One only needs moral superiority, which is best expressed through mass moral outrage. Thoughts? I think we've lost. You've stumped them.
I still think it's maybe unfair to say they've just given up on right. The difference between right and wrong. I think it's more that, yes, one has simply weaponized outrage, be it real outrage or be it fake outrage.
Yes.
Frankly, I still think it's worth pointing out, one learnt it from the right, and perhaps the right ought to do a bit of navel-gazing in that regard and ask itself whether those methods were a good invention.
Well, we know full well. I mean, whether or not the right invented it, I feel like this is much older than it's going to be something employed by people throughout history. The real enemy is dualistic thinking in general. The fact that if you're not using pluralistic thinking, you are naturally pushing yourself towards a massively dichotomized, a black and white kind of view of things, where you just become more and more radicalized. The left considers that the right is a homogenous evil group. The right considers that the left is a homogenous evil group, and then no one gets anywhere. People can perceive the differences within their own factions, but they don't perceive those in their perceived enemies. and vice versa. It's a really dangerous mode of thinking to get into, and it should never be allowed to dominate politics.
I still think this modus operandi, as in fake outrage combined with lobby groups, and whatever you call them, think tanks, whatever, it's all lobbies.
Special interest groups, yeah.
Those things combined, the way it operates now, to my mind, is kind of the equivalent of the AK-47. It's something one wishes one had never invented.
Yes, but at the same time, was its invention effectively inevitable? Who knows? We are stuck with it now, and we have to deal with it. But going back to the story at hand, Innocence Farm in Trimley St Mary had been a part of the plans involving Trinity for a lorry park. The college said it supported work to fight climate change. A Cambridgeshire police spokeswoman said the force was liaising with the college and that a crime had been recorded for criminal damage. A spokeswoman for Barclays Bank confirmed activists carrying wheelbarrows full of mud spread it across the banking hall of its St Andrews Street branch, adding that the branch was kept open and staff ensured customers were safe. The activists chained themselves to an apple tree on the college's front lawn and said they were careful to ensure the digging took place a safe distance from the tree so as not to cause any damage to it. The local
can't they just leave them there chained up? Like just a couple of days? They'll take care of it.
Yes, that's what I would also suggest with those people who tend to glue themselves to things.
You walk over to them and you say, "Oh, no, we don't want to get rid of the chains or anything like that, but give us the key." And then they walk away or swallow it or something. The local group also claimed on Twitter that the reason they'd done this is that the college had invested more money in oil and gas companies than any other Oxbridge college. It invested £9.1 million, apparently. They own Innocence Farm in Suffolk and want to sell it to Port to build a lorry park.
University? Is this the same university where there was this treasurer who basically, when it was demanded that one divest oneself of any oil company investments and whatever, where he said, well, I'm sorry, but in the short term, that's just not possible. But if you insist, we could always turn off the gas central heating.
Yes.
And, of course, the student body reacted rather outraged. Oh, well, I say the student body. The people purporting to represent the student body reacted with outrage. And in fact, Harvard University then criticized said university for having made such comments because one needed to signal that one was on the side of virtue.
What I find funny is this quote. Local businessman Dr. Tim Norman described the action as counterproductive vandalism. Funny that. It seemed to confuse the tourists too, as it wasn't clear what they were doing it for.
Well, I would have a few suggestions here. For one, if you one day open your front door and then somebody just starts carrying, dirt into your house and dumping it on your carpet, will you really just stand there? Or might you just be inclined to perhaps prevent them from doing so, if need be physically? On the other hand side, if there are some people who are determined to chain themselves to a tree, why not just go out there and just make sure that they haven't got themselves too dirty digging up your lawn, and just throw a few buckets of cold water on them?
Yeah, that's good optics.
Yeah.
And then just see whether that might fix the problem of their wishing to remain chained to your tree.
Well, all you do is you introduce a statute which says that all protests must begin before 9 a.m. And then none of them will ever come out because they're never out of bed before 9 a.m. Simple as that. The other thing is that, like, Extinction Rebellion consistently... I was talking to one of my friends who, bless his heart, is neutral, shall we say, towards Extinction Rebellion, because they turned up at my university recently as well, and he said, "Well, at least they're doing something." I was like, if what they're doing is completely counterproductive, turning the public off and making everyone go, "Look at those balmy prats over there," then what's the point? It's like, yeah, but at least they're doing something. I don't understand this mindset that doing something is better than nothing, even if it's running headlong in the wrong direction. You know what I mean?
Kind of the very definition of impotent rage.
Yes. It's like you've got no outlet to express this. Why can't you do something productive? Why didn't you take an engineering degree and then work to solve the plastic-based crisis, for goodness sake? Like, instead of, like, sitting out here as a defunct academic and ruining a lawn which everyone is paying to enjoy, and causing more carbon.
Let's be clear. It's not going to be the engineering students out there. It's going to be the sociology students.
Well, you'd be surprised. But
really?
Yes,
Okay.
they come from a real mix of backgrounds these days. But I do agree the humanities are most to blame for this sort of thing. Absolutely.
But there's the evil twin of doing something ineffectual, which is being seen to be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that you're doing something bad, it's just you have to highlight that you're doing something bad.
I kind of look at it as like, you know how the statement is, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. If you have nothing good to contribute, do nothing at all. I think it's a good starting point, you know.
Well, I would just like to point out that my approach of basically throwing water over them would be combined with a hope that I would then face a trial in front of Justice Julian Knowles.
Right.
Oh yes.
Because yes, he's the chap who was the judge at the High Court over Harry Miller. The chap who was who got investigated by police and had the police come around and then phone him and tell him to check his thinking regarding what he was saying about transgender issues on Twitter.
Yes.
I don't think I ever heard what happened to that.
Well, it's basically he managed. I mean, I'm assuming he crowdfunded. Either he crowdfunded or he had some wealthy backers come to him, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But he forced a judicial review at the High Court in London, and it's been a bit of a landmark case. So there are some issues that still haven't been resolved. So certain things were backed by the court, but it was somewhat enjoyable because the judge, which was this Julian Knowles, he came out with just some classic things.
Yes, it was.
I mean, I've got it in front of me here. What is it? So basically, this is his very opener. This is how he opens his judgment. In his unpublished introduction to Animal Farm, George Orwell wrote, "If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear." So this is a judge beginning his judgment with Orwell, and he finishes with, in his treatise on liberty, John Stuart Mill wrote, "If all mankind minus one were of one opinion, and only one person were of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind." So here's a judge actually quoting John Stuart Mill and Orwell in order to tell them, look, folks, you can't just do this.
I wonder if he subscribes to Sargon.
I mean,
because it's everything we've been saying for about 3-4 years.
Yes.
In a court verdict.
And I mean, this one is also beautiful. He writes, "The effect of the police turning up at the claimant's place of work because of his political opinions must not be underestimated. To do so would be to undervalue a cardinal democratic freedom. In this country, we have never had a Checker, a Gestapo, a Stasi. We have never lived in an Orwellian society." So this is him pretty much calling the police Gestapo for turning up at this man's place of work. And then calling him, telling him to check his thinking.
Right. And I certainly wouldn't call it hyperbole either.
And there are some sort of flaws to this, but I'm just not sure how far this judge felt he could legally go. So much of this is based on what is called hate crime operational guidance. So that is what they were following. Now, he has said that, as far as he is concerned, this guidance according to which they're operating is lawful. So this may well mean, in speak, as in, this is beyond my pay grade. I can't tell the police how they ought to operate or not, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, he has made it absolutely clear, as in, if you turn up at a person's place of work because of something he has done when expressing an opinion on Twitter, then you're out of your bloody mind. And it's how shall we say, it is, for an American, it more than likely doesn't quite have the same impact because you have the First Amendment. But for us, the way things have been going over here, to actually hear a judge say something like this
just breathes life
so
back into
heartening. It is unreal.
Right. When did this happen? I mean,
this happened last
the
week.
verdict.
Last week.
So it's pretty new. Oh, okay.
And the only thing I would sort of say is, one of the problems we have in our system is that all these bad laws, the way they tend to get resolved over time is via the courts. It doesn't tend to be the politicians.
As long as it's not the Supreme Court, Britisher.
Yes. And in this case, I think we simply face a dilemma. And that is, I don't think the courts can resolve this. The only way this is going to be resolved is if politicians stand up and take this on and reverse some of the changes that have been made. But of course, that means that they will have weeping trans people pouring fake blood on themselves outside Parliament, saying that they are literally being killed by Parliament. But they have to have the courage to just simply face that down.
Yes,
and say, look, in a way, do a bit of a Trump and just say, I don't care.
Yeah,
use your brain. Yes.
It's really creepy the way when you said, what was it, hate crime operational guidelines? I mean,
Yes.
that's just perfect. Just replace it with thought crime operational guideline, and it's perfect.
The thing is, they have it in their guidelines. This goes back to a famous case here in Britain. There was a murder of a chap called Stephen Lawrence. I think it was 1993, and thereafter, it appeared that the police didn't really investigate the case properly. There was an inquiry made, and the inquiry, it was the Macpherson report, I believe.
Yes,
they then came back and said it wasn't really just that the officers involved were racist and therefore didn't just want to investigate this properly. No, it's that the entire police force is institutionally racist, as in this is a kind of social construct. This is an inherent problem within the whole thing. And therefore they came up with things like hate crime operational guidance, as in this is the methodology according to which the police must work. And one of these things in the hate crime operational guidance is that they must seek to, how shall we say, sort of disarm situations before they get out of hand. Now, in a way, that is how police sort of operate as standard when in the street. If you've got two groups of angry folks going at each other, you will seek, like demonstrators, pro-Trump, anti-Trump demonstrators, and they're hissing and whatever at each other. Chances are you'll place yourself between them and possibly try and get a bit of distance between the two groups so they can't start throwing brickbats at each other, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And they have taken that into the sphere of the verbal, as in, if somebody starts getting involved in saying nasty things about trans people or black people or this or that, well, who knows what that might lead to. So we better intercede before it goes anywhere.
That's what you get when you start conflating the word violence with,
Precisely.
with actual violence. They talk about verbal violence and stuff like that.
Precisely, and that's why the judge made it absolutely clear that there was no chance whatsoever, there was no indication at all that this guy would in any way be involved in violence due to what he had said about trans people on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And that therefore there was no justification for them acting in any way, shape, or form. So the problem we face is that this judge has come out very strongly, which is welcome, but at the same time, he has allowed this hate crime operational guidance to continue. But, I have a sort of a hunch that may indeed be because he feels, I can't really intervene in this.
At what level was this verdict?
This was the High Court.
Is that the Supreme Court, or
this is a senior judge? This is not some this
do
is
you
not
have
some
a Supreme Court?
at a magistrate's court.
Do you have a Supreme Court, or how does it work?
We have a Supreme Court, as we all learnt when the Brexit thing happened. I don't know how the High Court stands in connection to the appeals court or whatever, but I think this counts as a legal precedent. I could be wrong. I'm far from a legal expert. But this was regarded, this was taken on by the press and reported as, no, this is a landmark case. Something substantially has shifted with this guy coming out and saying, no, look, you just, this will not be allowed. You can't get away with this. So as such, yes, this was very heartening, but the problem remains, as in this hate crime operational guidance may now need to be reinterpreted, but it will still be down to how they interpret it.
Okay, let me get this straight.
How they then act upon it.
Let me get this straight. This hate crime operational, what was it? Guidance. Is that an actual law, or is it just some sort of decree that some politician said to the police? Or
no, this is a kind of modus operandi that the police have developed. So this is in a way their the way they tackle things. So they have worked out a means. This is their methodology with which to deal with hate crime.
So it's kind of a doctrine.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Yes, a doctrine.
Right.
And the thing is, what it would take is someone like, say, the Home Secretary, who is in charge of the police force and is a cabinet member, to basically just say, okay, fine, this changes.
Right, because there's no law for him to strike down.
Yes, precisely.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So it's, you can sort of see the problem, as in, where can the judge go? What are the limits?
Yeah, exactly. If there's no law to strike down, I guess he's got no options.
So that's where one then has to look to the politicians. At some point, the politicians need to be willing to, like Trump, do something and then just face the wrath of these people and just shrug and just go, no, we don't care.
Right. But what were the
tantrums however you want? We're putting this away because this is just plain wrong.
But what was the specifics of the case where that was put before the judge? Like, was he charged with something, this guy, or
no, he was.
Or was he suing the state, or
Yes, as I say, he demanded a judicial review. So this is the equivalent of a court trial, based on an occurrence. So basically, he hadn't been charged or anything, but he just basically went and said, look, this that happened here, this is unacceptable. The courts need to look at this and make a ruling as to whether this is permissible or not. Because, as I say, they somebody complained about his tweets. He then got investigated. They came to his work. They told him he had to check his thinking, and apparently they indicated or at least this is how he understood it, that if he were to continue tweeting like this, he may get prosecuted.
Right.
And he felt, hang on, this is just not acceptable. Why the hell is the... And I believe he was himself a former police officer.
Didn't you say that he said it was permissible, though?
Sorry?
Didn't you say that the judge said it was permissible?
The judge effectively said that everything that had happened in his case was unlawful.
Yes, because it was recording hate crime incidents and hate crime.
Yes, that's another one. They also recorded a hate incident, which they put down as a non-crime hate incident.
Yes. People in chat are pointing out, Britisher, that British judges can't strike down laws like the US Supreme Court, as Parliament is supreme. It can, however, interpret them differently.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yes, you have got this problem that basically our politicians, they don't want to face what Trump faced. And the only way in which we can possibly turn this around is if they actually just do so. As in, Boris needs to find what he had in him when he made his letterbox comments and just basically go with it. Because I honestly do think, and I really don't believe this is wishful thinking on my part, I think the population is behind this, as in
never be afraid
nobody wants this.
Never be afraid to call people ridiculous. Yes. I agree. I just want to move us on because unfortunately I have to bring us to a close just due to time constraints. But last couple of super chats have come in. Rory Herbert, I missed his super chat unfortunately, but during the Extinction Rebellion lawn fiasco, he said, "I recall that lawn at my son's graduation in 2012." Well, I think it's good that you got to experience it before it was so unceremoniously torn up by the Extinction Rebellion fanatics that have gone through there. DRT is King says, "The left is evil. Commies have killed more than any other ideology ever. Right-wing dictators are much rarer and far less murderous than Adolf or Papa Joe." So there's that.
Well, I think that's...
They still are murderous. They're just not as murderous.
Or not as frequent murderers. And
that takes us down that rabbit hole of whether the Nazis are right-wing. So let's not even go there.
Yes, I know your position fairly well on that, Britisher, but I don't think we're prepared for such a debate just this evening.
Precisely.
Certainly
Given that we're bringing this to a close.
We are. So I'd like to thank everybody for turning up. Thank you very much to my impromptu guests this evening. Thank you for turning up, Undoomed and Rubber. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you very much to the Britisher for turning up very punctually and on time.
The punctual Britisher, precisely.
The most punctual of Britishers.
It's only due to your tardiness that we started late, and it had nothing to do with my arriving seconds before we actually were supposed to go on air.
Not at all. I pressed the button as soon as I physically could. We didn't even exchange salutations. But yes, I will see you all later in the week. I'm hoping to get a video out this week. I'm hoping to run the Atrocity streams at the weekend. And I'm hoping to see you all again next week for another Fake Accents Unite. The academic agent tells me that he will be joining us, notwithstanding. And speaking of the academic agent, please feel free to tune in to Unpopular Opinions both tomorrow and next Tuesday, because I will be on both shows, and it is the 99th and the 100th episode of the show. So if you're in favour of that, please do turn up. Thank you very much, everyone, and good night. Take care.
Toodle pip.